Alright, next we've got the Kringle. So we're going to take our 1 cup of flour and our half a cup of cold butter. And again, we're just going to be cutting the shortening or cutting the butter into the flour. And so we're going to use our pastry blender for that. Fair warning here, the recipe that I wanted to use took multiple days and we didn't plan well enough at this point to be able to use that recipe. So we used a recipe that's a little bit different but says it tastes very similar with, without having to make the dough beforehand and let it sit for a day or two. So we probably will, in fact, make a more authentic version in the future at some point, and so that way, you guys can have kind of that comparison to see, what this one looks like, what that one looks like, and if you make both, you can taste them both and let us know what you think. But this one is it's pretty good, and so we will show you how it is. So there we've cut the butter into the flour, and there we've added 2 tablespoons of water, cold water, ice cold water, in fact, and then we're going to mix that together to form our base dough. Okay, and so I mixed it by hand. I found that to be easiest, and you're just wanting to just to get it pretty well mixed together. I had to add a little bit more water there. Just made sure it was very cold. And then you're going to go ahead and take it out and break it into 2 even-sized pieces. And then what you're looking to do is you're looking to get 3-inch by 12-inch kind of fairly even flat pieces on a wax paper lined cookie sheet or baking pan. All right. And a little bit of history of the Kringle. So the Kringle was brought to Racine, Wisconsin in the late 1800s by Danish immigrants. And why Danes? Well, the Kringle comes from Denmark, and in Denmark, in fact, the Kringle is the symbol for a bakery, and so you'll see pretzel-shaped pastries on signs all over Denmark, and that means bakery. And so in Denmark, the Kringle is traditionally pretzel-shaped. In Wisconsin, it seems like, based on what I could figure in my research, that it's probably round, and I'm not sure where that comes from. Probably just something that has happened over the years based on how they make it in Wisconsin or something to that effect. All right, so there we have our base. Now we will go ahead and start on our second layer of dough. And so we're going to take another half a cup of butter, and we're going to melt that in a saucepan, a fairly large saucepan because it is going to take up a fair amount of room here. And then once that butter gets pretty well melted, we're going to go ahead and add 1 cup of water. And then you want to let that get fairly hot. And so we're just going to stir that together and let it heat up. And the interesting thing about the Kringle is, so the Danish bakers, they went on strike at some point, and so they were all fired, and they hired Austrian bakers to replace them. The Austrian bakers had this technique for rolling flour between layers of dough. And so then when the Danish bakers came back to work, they kept that style of making pastry. And so that's where you get the Kringle from. And that's why it's so unique to Denmark, and why in Racine, Wisconsin, where there were at one point more Danes than anywhere else in the country, there are lots and lots of Kringle shops. All right, so there we have added our 1 cup of flour, and we have whisked it together to form a sort of a really thick dough. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to add 3 large eggs. And I believe that I may have mixed this too much because our dough was very thick, and I think maybe it's supposed to be a little bit lighter and fluffier. But yeah, so there's 2 eggs, and then we'll add the 3rd egg here in just a second. And you have, at this point, you will have turned the heat off, I believe. So yeah, turn the heat off. All right, there's our 3rd egg. and then just make sure that you stir it till it's well combined, and that will, and then go ahead and add, there's our ½ teaspoon of almond extract. And that is the completion of our dough, our middle layer. All right, so then what you're going to do is you're going to take that dough and you're going to put it in just kind of almost like a mound in the middle of our base layer of dough. And you can kind of shape that a little bit better than I did, maybe get it a little bit more round, more even looking. But that's what you're looking for. And then you're going to go ahead and bake that at 350 degrees for 50 to 60 minutes until it kind of puffs up and looks nice and golden brown. So here we're going to throw it in the oven, and then we're going to go ahead and make our icing. All right, icing. So for the icing, we're going to go ahead and do 2 cups of powdered sugar. We got 3 to 4 tablespoons of milk. I think I might have used 4 tablespoons. Our 1 tablespoon of softened butter, and ½ a teaspoon of almond extract, and then you're just going to whisk that together until it's smooth. Okay, it doesn't take too long. And there, it's just went to go get a spatula so that I could get that off the whisk, and whisking it together a little bit more. You can see what it's kind of coming together there, and this is a really good icing. I recommend this recipe for other icings if you want to. And there, it's finished. That's what your icing should look like. Pretty good stuff. Pretty good. It was very sweet and delicious. All right, so now we're going to take our Kringles out of the oven. You can see nice and golden brown on top. Perfect. They look super yummy already. All right, and then you're just going to drizzle the icing on top. Yum. And then once you've got the icing on there so that it's kind of nice and even and you've got most of the top coated, you can go ahead and add whatever topping you want on top of that. So sprinkles and sliced almonds are pretty traditional. So I went ahead and did both. One of them is going to have sprinkles, this one here. And of course we used red, white, and blue for 4th of July because it was around that time when we did this recipe. And there's our sliced almonds on the other one. That's it.